Hey, this is MJ, and in today's tutorial I'll be working through a cute crochet summer top with you. This will be a V-neck, it will be short sleeve, and I'm doing it a crop length. Now the yarn that I'm using is comfy fingering weight yarn, and I will be using the color Ivory for this tutorial. Our PDF crochet pattern does include another version of this top where I add the hood and also the long sleeves. So you can make either top, and this tutorial will guide you through the steps required to make this crochet pattern. I'll be using 2 crochet hooks for this pattern, a 4.5 and a 3.5 millimeter. These are Dots crochet hooks from WeCrochet. You get the full set with your purchase, and the yarn is also from WeCrochet. So I'll have those links in the description box. You'll also need a stitch marker, a tapestry needle, scissors, and a measuring tape. This video is not intended to teach you how to crochet. It is just a tutorial to show you the steps to work through this particular crochet pattern. If the video is too fast, there is a slow down option in your YouTube settings. So if you click below the video on the gear icon, you can choose the required speed. This crochet pattern includes sizes from extra small to 5X. If you check the description box below this video, you will find the link that will take you to the blog post, as well as the links to purchase the pattern on either Ravelry or Etsy. So we're going to be starting at the neck and working our way down. So I have pulled from the center of the ball. I just find it works a little bit easier to do that. Once you get going, you sometimes need to pull out a big section, but once you work through that, then you don't have to worry about the ball rolling all over the place as you work. So now I have tried this both ways with the larger hook and the smaller hook, and I think the smaller hook is the better way to go to start this out. You just want to make sure that you don't do it too tight when you're using the smaller hook. So what we're going to do is start with a chain of 94, and this will be the same for all sizes. So chain out 94 and just make sure that those chains aren't too tight, or you're going to really struggle to work back into them. And try to get those chains all nice and even. So once you have your chain, we're going to work single crochets along it. But rather than working into the back loop of the chain, we're going to turn the chain and work into these back bumps that you see here. Okay, so that's going to give it a nice clean edge. Now, if you prefer to work foundation single crochets to start this off, you could do that as well. That is a little bit more challenging for beginners, so I typically would rather show you the easier way to do it than the more difficult. But if you are familiar with foundation single crochets and you prefer that, you can go ahead and do 93. So what I'm going to do is now in the second chain from the hook, so 1, 2, see this back bump right here, we're going to work a single crochet. And you're going to work them, and because I didn't do that chain too tight, I'm able to work into those nice and easy. If it's a struggle, you've probably done your chain too tight, and then you can see we're going to have that nice stitch across this side, which will be easy to work into when we're doing our edging or if you're adding a hood. Now, I also like to mention that if for some reason that you are struggling with these back bumps, you can always just go ahead and work in the back loop of the chain. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do that. I definitely don't want you struggling and giving up. So whatever works, okay? So I'm going to continue working along my chain so that I have 93 single crochets. Okay, so once you have this complete, this is probably the most tedious part, getting that worked up. The rest of the pattern will work up really quick. Don't be intimidated by the fact that this is fingering weight yarn. You will be so surprised as to how quickly this pattern is going to work up. Now I'm going to start off my first row still using the smaller hook, and then we'll swap out for the larger one as we get going. So this row is fairly straightforward. We're going to be working V stitches across. It's going to get us set up for our yoke. So we're going to begin with a chain 3. I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to work a double crochet in that first stitch. So this is going to count as our first V stitch. Now I'm going to skip 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to work a V stitch in the next, but I'm going to chain 1 first. So 1, 2, 3, and in the next stitch I'm going to do a V stitch, which is a double crochet. Chain 1 and a double crochet in the same stitch. Okay, so that's how to do a V stitch, and when I refer to V stitch throughout the pattern, this is what you're going to be doing. So V stitch, chain 1. Now I'm going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and a V stitch in the next. Now right now I'm working on my wrong side. This is the right side. If this is helpful for you, you can always add a stitch marker to mark the right side of your work. I'll do that as I move forward a little bit farther. And now also you can mark your sections as you go. You can wait till the next round or row, whatever you think. I'm going to grab some more stitch markers because I'm going to mark the sections as we go, just so that you can mark yours if you find that helpful. So our front section is really small because we're going to be increasing the front. So only this first V stitch and those 3 stitches are the front. So we're going to mark this V stitch, so the second one, because this is going to separate these sections. So front, and then we're working on our sleeve section next. I'm going to chain 1, 1, 2, 3, working a V stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and you could just whip across this in this pattern if you want to worry about the sections on the next row. Two, 3. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do my V's, V stitch, chain 1, skip 3. I'm going to work it across, and then I'm going to come back and we'll mark out the sections. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end, and if you have the right number of stitches, the 93 that we started with, you should be ending with 4 and doing a V in the last stitch. If you don't have, if you're not ending correctly, then double check your stitches going across and make sure that you did start with the 93. So V stitch in the end. So let's count our V stitches to make sure you're on track. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 V stitches. Now we're going to separate our sections, because when you're working a top down, you have your fronts, your sleeves, and your back. So I'm going to count now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and mark the next V stitch. So this marks off my sleeve. Now I'm going to count 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to mark the next V-stitch, and this marks my back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my next V-stitch is marked. Okay, so we have 1 and 1 for our fronts, 5 and 5 for our sleeves, and 8 for our back. Now, what's handy with marking these is it is going to keep you on track for where we will do the increase. So when we're increasing, we're doing a V in the V stitch instead of the chain 1 spaces. But I'm going to go ahead and change over to the larger hook now to start on the next row. So I'm going to chain 3, going to turn. We are now to the right side of our work, and if you want to mark the right side, you can tell by this edge looking a lot nicer, but if you really feel like you need to mark that as you work throughout this pattern, you can just put a stitch marker that it is marked to, maybe I'll do this row to the right side. And then that's just going to help you as you work through the pattern. So now when we're increasing our front panel, we're going to do a V in the V. So I'm going to increase here. So I'm going to do my double crochet in that V stitch. Okay, so this is a V stitch and it's worked into this V stitch for our front panel increase. Now I'll chain 1. I'm going to work a V stitch in the chain 1 space. Chain 1, and now I've come to my mark stitch, which is where we put a V in the V for our increase of the yoke. So we're going to do a V in the V, chain 1. Now you can continue moving the stitch marker if you need that as a visual, because we're doing so many V stitches. Now I can usually pick out as I work along that this V is in this V and that's where I need to do it. But if you're a beginner or you really don't want to mess up, then just keep moving your marker as you go, just to make sure for your next row that you are working the V in the V and not skipping over that and just working into the chain 1. So now what we'll do is work a V stitch, chain 1, across to the next marker. Okay, so you're always doing a V chain 1, and then we're working them now in the chain 1 spaces. So you can see how quickly this really does work up. We're working double crochets and chain 1s. Really easy to pick out our chain 1 spaces. So even though this is a fingering weight yarn, you're going to work through this pattern very quickly and you're going to get a nice lightweight top, which is perfect for summer and spring. Like, you don't want something that's too heavy and too warm. So using fingering weight yarn is a really good option for your summer crochet projects. And this is a cotton blend, so it's really great for the warm weather. Let's just take a look at it here. So it's Pima cotton and it only has 25% acrylic and it's super soft. So it's not only giving you the nice breathability of cotton, but it's also super soft. It's nothing like your cotton that you get, you know, to make dishcloths and such. Like, it's not stiff and scratchy like that. This is nice and soft. So now once you get to your next V, we can remove that marker to make it a little bit easier. We're going to work a V in the V stitch, chain 1, and I'm going to mark this stitch again. And then you're going to do your chain 1, working your V's, chain 1 in the chain 1 spaces across to the next marker. Okay, so I'm coming up to my next marker. I'm just going to remove it, work a V in the V stitch. And then I am going to add my marker back again. And I'm going to continue working across. Okay, so we're coming up to our last marker. V-stitch in the V-stitch, chain 1. Place my marker back. And now I'll be doing a V in the chain 1. And then we're going to be adding a V-stitch in the V-stitch to increase. And then we can turn. So now I don't want a drastic increase on this collar area. Okay, so this front panel, if I kept doing V's in V's as I went, it would increase rather drastically, which I don't want to do, because if we take a look at this, each section is going to go up by 1 V-stitch only. So if I look at the first row here, we had 5. Then if we count the next, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And included in the PDF, I have done up a chart that shows each section for each row, just so you can track it to make sure that you're on track with this. Now, if you look at the back, we had 8. So now we have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the back is going up 1 V-stitch every row. But if we increased our fronts 1 each side every row, this is going to increase much quicker than our back, which we don't want to do. We don't want it increasing that drastically. You could, if you wanted to then stop increasing, like increase it drastically and then stop so that it doesn't continue to go much bigger than our back panel. But if you want to just follow along with the pattern how I've designed it, it makes things simple for you. So this row, we're not going to do an increase. So what we're going to do is chain 3, and then we're going to skip over the V-stitch. So instead of putting a V in the V, we're skipping over the V and we're going into the first chain 1 space. I'm going to put a V, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, another V in the next chain 1 space, chain 1. And so now this row, this one had 2 V's, this one's going to have 2 V's and that chain that would count as a double crochet. Then we get to the marker, and always in the marked stitch, we're doing a V and a V to increase our yoke. Okay, so this is where the increase happens to get this yoke getting bigger as we go. So V, chain 1, put our marker back in. So if you recall me saying all of them start the same, is because going around the neck, we want the same for all sizes, because even though we may get, we're all different sizes, our necks are very similar, and we're not going to have a really big neck that's going to be too oversized for a plus size. So what will happen is you'll keep increasing your yoke to get to the size that you want. So you stop when you get to, let's say, an extra small, you stop. When you get to a small, you stop increasing. and so forth. So the bigger size you're making, the more rows you're going to do to get it large enough to fit around your body. So what I'm going to do at this point now is I'm going to work across V-stitch chain 1 in the chain 1 spaces, and I will be putting my V in my V-stitch at every marker. So I'm going to work that across. Okay, so I've now worked all the way across. I have my 2 V's for my front. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'll just be working a double crochet into the last V-stitch. Okay, so this makes this side equal this side. We started with a chain on this side, so our 2 chains are a double crochet, and then the 3rd chain counts as the chain 1. So this row did not increase those front panels. We still increased our sections, but we didn't increase this front panel to be 3. We want to keep it at 2 V's rather than 3 V's. But now the next row we're going to increase. So chain 3, and now we're going to put a V-stitch in the chain 1 space. Okay, so it's now starting with a V, chain 1, V-stitch in the chain 1 space, chain 1, V-stitch in the chain 1 space, chain 1. So now when you look at the front, okay, so now instead of 2, we've gone up to 3. 1, 2, 3 V-stitches. And then we'll continue over across the pattern again, just working our V's in our marked V-stitches. So this part is quick and repetitive. So I'm going to work that across again, and then I'll meet you up to show you the end section. Okay, so I'm coming to the end. I've worked a V, chain 1, and now in our turning chain here, we're going to work another V stitch. Okay, so now you can see, looking here, this is our row that does not have a V. So this is the non-increase one. This one we've increased, and now we're going to increase again. And this is the pattern we're going to do. We're going to have 1 row where we're not increasing, then we're going to have 2 rows that we increase. So chain 3, turn, work a V in the V, chain 1, we're going to work a V stitch, chain 1, the next chain 1 space, work them across, V stitch, chain 1 in the chain 1 spaces, over to the marked stitch, chain 1. So you can see now we have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to work a V in the V. Okay, so continue working this all the way across, and I'll meet you up at the end again. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end. I'm going to V-stitch, chain 1 in the last chain 1 space, and now I'm going to do a V in my V-stitch to increase. Okay, so now if you look, you can see this one, we didn't do the increase. We now have 2 increases, and now we're going to do another non-increase. So we're going to chain 3, turn, and then we're skipping over the V-stitch. So when we increase, we're putting the double crochet in the V, but when we're not, we're skipping over it and just working our V into the chain 1 space. Chain 1, and then working across as usual, chain 1, chain 1, and then we are going to do our yoke increase here in the V stitch. Okay, so let's just take a look, because this is the most complicated part. The rest is so simple, but when we're doing these increases, so this one had 1, 2, 3, 4 V stitches. This one now has 1, 2, 3, 4, and a double crochet. And then the next 2 rows, you'll increase again, and then you'll do another row that isn't increasing. So this is how the pattern's going to work. This is why it's a good idea to follow along with the written pattern. Follow the repeats for the size you're working on. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on my 6th row. So now what I'm going to do is meet you up for row 15. It's worked a little bit different because we're stopping the extra small size, but we're going to continue making a bigger size for this tutorial. So it will continue increasing with the pattern, but the extra small has to be worked a little bit different. It will have a little bit shorter V-neck than, or V kind of coming in as the other sizes. So that one's the only one that's different. The rest of the sizes will work the same neck amount. So what we're basically doing is we're wanting to get our fronts equaling the back. So for the extra small, we're going to have 22 V stitches at the back, and then we want 11 for each front. For the remaining sizes, we want 24 at the back, and we want 12 at each of the fronts. And then after that point, we won't be increasing the neck amount anymore. So you'll still need to increase for a larger size, but not the part of the neck that goes into the V. So I just want to remind you at the end, we're going to just do a double. So I'll work that across and finish that off for you, because then you're going to be doing repeats. Okay, I've worked all the way across. I'm coming to my last V stitch, and I'm just going to work, I've already chained 1, I'm going to work a double crochet. Okay, so now I'm just going to be working repeats of the last 2 rows. So we're going to do 2 more increases, and then we'll do a non-increase, etc. But I'm going to work up a total of 14 rows, and then I'll meet you up to show you 15. This row 15 will only be for the extra small size. If you're working on any of the other sizes, you can work away following the repeat up to row 17. Okay, so I've worked up to row 14. Now what you want to do, instead of going to our non-increase row, we're going to do another increase. So we'll chain 3 and work a V stitch, chain 1. So this is just if you are working the extra small. So if you're working on the other sizes, we're going to skip this. I just want to show you this section if you're working on the smaller sizes, because this is where it alters from that increase pattern, because we need to get our front panels equaling the back. So I'm just going to work my way across to our V. Okay, so now rather than having only 10, we're going to have 11 stitches until we get to, I don't have this marked here, but this would be marked. So you would do your increase here and then continue. So your back is going to have 22, and this is row 15 we're working on, and then you end with the same. So that's how you work the extra small, but I'm going to pull it back because I'm going to continue working the pattern as normal for the rest of the sizes. Okay, so the rest of the sizes you continue as normal. This is a non-increase row. Okay, so I've been working my rows and I have 17 in total, and my front panels now equal the back. So I have 12 V-stitches, 12 V-stitches, and then we have 24 along the back. So we have the same if we put our fronts together as the back. And what I'm going to do is now slip stitch in the first V of this side. Okay, and I'm going to fasten this off. So we've joined up the fronts. Okay, so once you've joined this up, you want to put the right side facing, and we're going to join. So here's the back, this is the first sleeve, so we're going to join into this V stitch. Three, and work a double crochet, chain one, and then work our V stitches, chain one across. And you're just going to keep going around for continue still working your rounds until you get to the size that you need. So we'll add a V in our V stitch. And then work across the front. And now as you go across the front, so in the center, I've just worked my V stitch and continued in my row. So continue working your V-stitch chain one in each chain one space and your V in your V-stitch around. So I'm completing round 18, but if you're working on the larger sizes, I'm going to walk through the steps with you just so you don't get confused when working on those sizes. So we won't be continuing if you're working on the tutorial size, but if you have a larger size, what you're going to do is I've marked off all of the V stitches that we work into. So we're going to slip stitch to join. Then we're going to chain 3 and we need to turn our work. So we continue to turn because we were turning rows. At the start, you want to continue turning, and it will also keep our join right at the one spot. So what you're going to do, it's going to seem a little bit awkward, but in the marked V stitch, we're going to work another V and chain 1. So you can move your marker . so that you don't get confused. And then in the chain one space, we'll work a V, chain one, the next chain one space, a V stitch, chain one, and you're going to do that, and for every marked stitch you're going to continue to do those increases, so putting your V in the V. So I'm going to work it all the way around. I'm going to meet you back up at the joint. Okay, so once you get all the way around back to that starting V, I've already chained one. We're going to slip stitch in the V to join, chain 3, turn, and you're working your double crochet in that same space. So like I say, it looks a little awkward and backwards, but it's going to keep our join at the same spot in that corner V. And then you chain one and keep going. So it really is rather simple, and you just want to keep going until you get to the rounds that you need for your size. You can also try it on as you go for fit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So now I'm on to 20. So you just keep going, count by your V's. It's really fast that way, and just keep making it big enough. And then that will make that your V isn't too deep. Now, if you wanted a deeper V, you could keep going and working back and forth in rows, but to keep this V sort of a reasonable length, this is the way that you can do that and still continue to increase your size. Okay, so I'm coming all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch in the starting V to join. Then this is the sleeve section, so you can come over to the next V. So you're going from V to V. You can slip stitch and fasten it off. I'm just going to put my marker here because this is where we want to be joining back up again. So I'm going to come over past the front to the next V, and we're going to join this sleeve as well. So go into the V, going to slip stitch. We're going across that entire sleeve section to the next V. We're going to slip stitch. Now this one, because we have two tails, you could knot this here just so that it doesn't come loose. And now we're going to come back over to this marker. This is where we're going to join back in to keep going around. So we're going to keep working in the round, but now we have our sleeves marked off. We're just going to be doing the body section. So this is the step you want to take as soon as you have gotten it big enough. And I just like getting the sleeves joined and right out of the way, just so it's done and joined up. So we can come into that chain one space, chain 3, and a double crochet, and that's our first V stitch. Chain 1, and then we're working V stitch, chain 1 all the way around. Okay, so we're going across the back right now, so I'm going to continue across. Okay, so I've worked across 26 V stitches, chain 1, and you can see we're coming to these V's that we've joined. So we're just skipping right over that, over each of the V stitches that we've joined to the next chain 1 space. And we're continuing now across the front with our V stitch chain 1 in each chain 1 space. Okay, so I've worked 26, I've chained 1. I'm going to slip stitch in our starting V to join, chain 3 and turn. So now we're back to the right side. Double crochet in the same space for our V stitch, chain 1, and we're going to continue now just like this, working in the round. So when you get all the way around again, you'll slip stitch into the V, turn, and keep working back and forth. So that's going to keep our join line right at the underarm, and you can keep working rounds until you get the length that you want. So you can go with a crop length, a hip length, or even a tunic length, really whatever you like. This would make a cute little beach cover up as well. So if you wanted to go longer, even down to the thigh or the knee, you could keep it short sleeve and it would be really cute over a bathing suit. So I'm going to continue now working my rounds off camera, and then I'll meet you back up when I get to my desired. Okay, so I have worked a total of 16 rounds for this top. Now you could, of course, alter this. If you want it longer, even if you wanted it a little bit shorter, you definitely could do that. So whatever you're happy with, I'm doing a total of 16. So now I'm going to slip stitch to join in the starting V. And now for this section, you have a little bit of flexibility as well as to how much you would like the top to pull in. So if you want it really snug around your waist, like you could pull it in more or less. If you want it loose, you could work stitches in every stitch. So you could do a single crochet, 3 single crochets for a V stitch, and then a single crochet for the chain 1. I'm going to pull it in slightly. So I'm going to do 3 single crochets for my V, but then I'm going to skip the chain 1. So I'm going to be pulling it in a little bit. So it's not going to be a loose band. It will be a little bit tighter. You can see on this one here, because I have skipped that chain 1 space, it pulls the waist band in at my waist. But if you were making it hip length, you might want that it's a little bit looser. So you may want to go in every stitch, like making sure to do a single crochet in the chain 1 space. But I wanted to pull in at my waist because I am going with a waist length top. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to do 2 single crochet and a single crochet in the double. So that counts as our 3 singles for that first V stitch. I'm going to skip over the chain 1. I'm going to do a single crochet, and a single crochet. I have a join here that I'll have to pop through to the other side so you don't see it. So now I'm going to skip the chain 1. I'm going to do a single in the double, a single in the chain 1, and a single in the double, skipping over the chain 1 space, and I'm going to continue around just like this. Okay, so once you've worked all the way around, we're going to slip stitch to join. And then I'm going to change over to my smaller hook for the band. So the band, you can make whatever length you want. So I'm going to go with a similar length to this one. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 stitches. So I'm going to chain out 15. Now, if you weren't pulling yours in tight and you wanted a shorter band and for it to be a little bit looser, you could go with half of this if you wanted, or really whatever number of stitches that you would like. So single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. And it's always a good idea to count just so you stay on track. So I'm going to have 14 stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to skip over our first stitch, which is the stitch that we slip stitched into when we joined, and I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Then you'll turn. Going to work in the back loops only. We're going to skip those first 2 slip stitches and then single crochet in the back loop only in those 14 stitches. So there's 14, chain 1 and turn, and then we'll work back down. And then what you'll do is slip stitch in your next 2 stitches along the base again, turn, and we're just going to keep joining the band to the base of the top as we work along. So you'll have the same number of rows per stitches along the base of the top. So if you have crocheted a single crochet in every stitch, you're going to have more rows than if you only crocheted your single crochet per V-stitch around. So this will take a bit for me to work up, so I will continue working it off camera, and then once I get this finished, I'll meet you up to show you how to slip stitch it together. Okay, so I've been working away on my band. I have it finished, and you should be ending up at the top. Just gonna pull this back. Okay, so I have my right side here is facing. So what I'm going to do is chain 1, and I want the right side of the band put together. And then we're going to slip stitch this band. so we're just slip stitching 1 slip stitch per stitch. Okay, so I've worked that across. Now you can fasten off and weave in that tail. Okay, and your sleeve cuff is going to get slip stitched together the same way. Make sure you put your right sides facing and work a slip stitch through each stitch. You can always fasten off and sew your seams together as well. But slip stitching just makes it easy and quick. Once you weave your tail in, you can fasten that off and just give that a trim. Okay, so it's always important to make sure that you are on the right side. So having that marker helps. And what we're going to do is work on our sleeve. And I'm only doing a short sleeve for this version. So we only need to do 2 rounds. So not a whole lot at all. Okay, so I have the top to the right side, but we will be joining to the wrong side of our work because you can tell that we ended here on a right side row. So we need to do a wrong side row when we're joining onto the sleeve. So what you want to do is find your V stitches that were joined. So this is a V stitch, this is a V stitch where we're joined up together, and then we'll be joining into the next chain 1 space. So working with my larger hook, I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook, and so in that first chain 1 space to the left of the V, we're going to do a slip stitch to join in the yarn. Now I'm going to chain 3 and work a double crochet for our first V stitch. I'm going to chain 1, work a V stitch in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, V stitch in the next chain 1 space. Okay, and we're going to work around just in our regular pattern. Okay, so I have a total of 23 V stitches worked around in every chain 1 space. So we're coming up here, you see the V, we're not working into those V stitches that we joined. So I've chained 1, I'm going to slip stitch in the first V to join. I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to turn, and I'm going to work back. So now I'm on my right side. So we want to finish on your right side. So if you want to make your sleeve longer, I just suggest ending on an even number row so that you're ending on your right side. So V in your chain 1 space, chain 1, V chain 1 in the next chain 1 space. And work this all the way around. So I'm just going to finish off with my V stitches as normal, keeping it at 23. Chain 1, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. Now what I'm going to do is work around a round of single crochet to set up for the sleeve cuff. Now I'm going to do this the same as the bottom band. I'm going to work a single crochet per V stitch, so 3 single crochets per V stitch, and I'm going to skip the chain 1. So I'll start it with 2 and 1 in the double. I'm going to skip the chain 1 space, single crochet in the double, single crochet in the chain 1 space, single crochet in the double. Skip the next chain 1 space and work around in this manner. Okay, so once you get all the way around, we're going to slip stitch to join and then change over to the smaller hook. And we're going to do, the cuff is going to be joined as you go, just like the bottom band. It's going to look like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches, and you can alter this how you want, just like we did the bottom band. So I'm going to chain out 9. I'm going to work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain down. So this ends up giving us 8 stitches. Okay, and you can see this is where we slip stitched. We want to slip stitch now into the next 2. You never want to put another slip stitch in the same stitch that's already been slip stitched. So just remember that as you work around. So you're skipping over the 2 slip stitches now, working single crochets in the back loop. So you're working 8. There's 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. And it's a good idea to count because I lose stitches all the time with these bands as well. So there's 8, chain 1 and turn, and then we're working back down 8 stitches, single crocheting in the back loop. And then it's a good idea to really look at this again. You can see we had a slip stitch in this stitch. So we're going to slip stitch now the next 2 again. And then we're just going to keep repeating this all the way around. So you're going to have the same number of rows as you have stitches worked around your arm opening. So I'll continue now working this off camera. And when you're finished that, you can just slip stitch it together. Okay, so I'm working on my long sleeved top, and I just wanted to jump on and show you how it's being worked if you want to do some decreases on the sleeves. So I've already worked 2 rounds, and I'm going to decrease the 3rd round. So what I'm going to do is chain 1. I'm going to work a double crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and a double crochet in the next chain 1 space. So I started off with my V. This is counting as a V stitch. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to work around, and I want to do another decrease at the end. But I'm going to have that I have another V here, and I'm going to decrease these 2. So go till you have 3 chain 1 spaces remaining. Okay, so I'm coming around on my sleeve. I have 1, 2, 3 chain 1 spaces. Let's do another decrease. So I'm going to work a double crochet, work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and we'll end with a V. Chain 1, I'm going to slip stitch in our starting V to join. I'm going to chain 3 and turn. And then I'm going to work 2 more rounds without doing any decreases. So you can add as many decreases to the sleeve as you want. If you want to really narrow it out, you can also try it on as you go to kind of get the right fit. I don't want to narrow mine off too much because I find for myself, I'd rather the sleeve a little bit loose, that it's not clinging to my arm. I find that will make it feel a little bit warmer than I want. So if it's loose, it's going to feel a little bit more light and airy and not feel as warm as if it's tight to my skin. Now, that's a personal preference. So if you want it to come down that it's narrowing out by the time you get to the cuff, then you can do that. So I've worked for my sleeve a total of 32 rounds, and that works out a nice length for my arm. But again, you can try on as you go to find the right length for your fit, because you could have a little longer arm or a little shorter arm. You might need to add a couple more rounds or do a couple less rounds. So I'm going to continue now. I'm going to work my rounds off camera, then I'll meet you back. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'm just looking at my other sleeve and I wanted to double check how many rounds I did in between. So I did go with 1, 2, 3 rounds before I did another decrease to kind of space it out a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to make sure I do the same on the other sleeve as well. Okay, so I've worked 3 more rounds. I'm going to slip stitch to join, chain 3 and turn. Work a double crochet. So there is the first V, chain 1, and we're going to do another decrease across the next 2 chain 1 spaces. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and then we'll continue around until we have 3 chain 1 spaces, and we'll do another decrease. Okay, so we have 3 chain 1 spaces remaining. We'll do another decrease. So double crochet, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and we'll end with a V in the last. Chain 1, slip stitch to join, chain 3, do a double, and just as you're coming back around, just want to mention again, make sure that you're counting this as a V, so don't do a stitch in between here or you're not going to be decreasing. You're just putting your V's on either side of it. So you should have 19 V stitches for this size, and I'm going to keep it at that many V's as I work around. Okay, so I'm going to continue now working 32 rounds in total, and once I have that done, I'll meet you up and I'll show you how to do the cuff as well. Okay, so I've worked a total of 32 rounds for my sleeve, and now I'm going to pull it in to work the cuff. So I'm going to chain 1, I've already slip stitched to join, and I'm going to do a single crochet in that first V stitch, and then a single crochet in the chain 1, single crochet in the V, single crochet in the chain 1. So basically each of the chain 1 spaces. So the chain 1 of the V, the chain 1 between the V's, and I'm just going to work around just like this. So I've worked around 38 stitches. I'm going to slip stitch to join, and now we can do a join as you go cuff to finish it off, which is worked just like the band that I've already shown you. So I want it to line up with the cuff that I've already done. So it's a total of 14 stitches. So I'm going to chain out 15. single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and single crochet down the chain. Okay, so we're going to skip the first stitch that's already been slip stitched into. We'll slip stitch in the next two, turn our work, and then skip the slip stitches, working single crochets through the back loop only. So this is repetitive of what I've already shown you. So I'm not going to continue showing you completely how to do the cuff. You're just going to work it all the way around, slip stitching the rows to the base of the sleeve, and then you can slip stitch the cuff together at the very end, just like we did with the band. Chain one and turn, work all the way back down, and then slip stitch in the next two stitches and complete your cuff. Now I want to work around the edge and finish it off. So I'm going to join back on the back because I don't want my seam where it's noticeable. So I'm going to join it back here in this corner, just sort of at our V-stitch section is a good spot to join. So I'm going to take my smaller hook, put a slip knot, put that on our hook, and I'm going to join in chain one, and I'm going to start single crocheting. This part will be straightforward because we're just working into each stitch. And this is where working into that back bump, you have a nice, easy stitch to work through as you're doing this. So just continue working all the way across the neck, and then once we get to working down the side of the V, I'll meet you back up. Okay, so I've worked all the way across the neck. Now we're getting to the V section, and we have our V-stitch rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my corner here. I'm going to do one single crochet for that foundation row. Then I'm going to do 2 single crochet per V stitch row. And this is going to be really easy because we have these nice big spaces to work in. Okay, and you're just going to work this down. When we get down to the end, I'm going to meet you up. And as you're working, just try not to do these stitches too tight. If you find it's pulling too much, change over to your larger crochet hook. Now I'm getting down to the bottom here where our corner is. Okay, I'm going to put 1 single crochet and then continue working up the other side of the V. So I'm just keeping my single crochets nice and loose. Okay, so once you get up, we're going to do 1 single crochet for that foundation row. Then we need to work single crochets, Just crocheting over my tail here as I go. Okay, so once you get all the way around, I'm going to slip stitch to join, chain 1, and then we're going to work single crochets through the back loops only in every stitch around. So I'm going to go across the neck. I'll meet you up to at the side. Once you get to the side, you're just going to continue working in the back loop, and it's going to give it a nice edge around the neck. It's going to look like this. Okay, and as you keep going, I'm just working one in every stitch. So now if you wanted to make this edging a little bit wider to give a little bit more coverage, you could go around making as many rounds as you feel you're happy with. I am going to just do a nice thin edge like this for the one that I'm working on. And also, I'm not pulling these stitches too tight. I'm keeping them loose. You want to be able to give it a tug that this is really nice, that it's not pulling the top in too tight, but you also don't want it too loose. So if you just work with the smaller hook, but just keeping your stitches loose, like you're not tugging on them, you're not pulling the stitch tight, and you're gonna know just by how this is, like you want to be able to pull it and it not go too loose. And if any of the stitches have pulled in, giving a little tug like that will probably fix any issues. Okay, so I've worked all the way around, and let's just give this a nice seamless join rather than slip stitching. You can slip stitch, it's probably going to be covered up, but if you're wearing your hair up and you want the back to look nice, you can always just make a nice seamless join so the stitch looks nice all the way around. So I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm going to go through both loops of that first stitch, come back and go through the back loop only. Okay, so then you get a little faux stitch happening in here. Then you can just take your tails and weave. You can always play around with the stitch just with your needle to make it nice. Always when you're weaving your yarn, go one way, go back in the opposite direction, and that's gonna secure it. Okay, so let's take a look at how this is looking. Really love this nice simple edging. We can also trim this tail. And we can put the top inside out. I'm going to remove this marker now and weave in any loose tails. Okay, so we have a bunch of tails at the underarm, and if you find that there's like some big gaps, you can always use these tails just to pull the stitches together a bit more. So let me just show you how to do that. Even do a little knot. And same goes for here if you want to pull that in a little bit. I mean, it's not super noticeable, so not a big deal, but can weave those tails. Okay, and then just finish weaving in. Do this for the other arm as well, and just finish weaving all of those tails so you don't have any loose ends. So what you want to do to add a hood is you're going to come to that starting foundation row. I'm going to use my smaller hook, put a slip knot on your hook, and we're basically going to mirror everything we did right here. So we're going to join in to the first stitch, and we want to start out with a V. So I'm going to chain 3 and work a V in that first stitch, chain 1, and I'm going to skip 3 stitches, and it's really easy to see what stitch you need to work into because it's just opposite this V. So work another V, chain 1, and continue chain 1, and I'm not even counting the stitches because it's easy just to see exactly where I need, but you should be skipping 3. Chain 1, and we're just going to work that all the way around the neck. Okay, so I'm almost to the end here. We're going to add a V stitch in the last stitch. Then I'm going to change over to my larger hook for the rest of the hood. So we're going to chain 4 because we want to go back and forth in rows without doing any increases. We want to be working the hood now the length of the neck, and you want to work the hood until it's about 10 inches in length. So you're basically just adding a rectangle almost to the neckline here. So we're going to do a V in the chain 1 space, chain 1, a V in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and continue across. Okay, so I'll meet you up at the end of the row. I'm coming to the end. I'm going to put a V in the chain 1 space. Then I'm going to chain 1 and work a double crochet in the V. And I'm going to chain 3, turn, and I'm working a V right away right here. Okay, so we're going to be alternating between this chain 4 row and starting with a V stitch row, and this is going to keep our stitch count on track so we're not doing any increases. So chain 1, V stitch, next chain 1 space, chain 1, V stitch, next chain 1 space, working all the way across. Okay, so I've worked across. I'm at 23 V stitches and we're adding our 24th in the turning chain. Then this row we're going to chain 4 and turn, and we're going to continue back across. So we're just alternating these rows. So we skip this V and go into the next chain 1 space and work a V. And I'll work that across. Okay, so I'm putting my last V, and this row we have 23 V stitches, and then we'll have 2 double crochets, 1 on each end, so the starting chain would count as a double, chain 1, and a double crochet in that last V. Okay, so I am just going to continue now working the hood, and you want a total of basically 10 inches worth of length. So you can measure your rows as you go to sort of get that 10 inch, and that should fit, the hood should fit nice at that point, but I'll meet you back up again to give you my final measurement and how many rows that I've worked. Okay, so for the hood, I worked a total of 23 rows, which is about 10 inches. Okay, now you could do it a little bit more. You could add a couple more rows if you want to give it a little bit more ease. It's pretty snug to go up over the head, but it's more for looks than actual function. So you may not need to go any bigger, and plus it will stretch out a little bit, but if you wanted to add a couple more rows, that would be fine. Now, what we'll do at this point is we're going to join it up. Now you could seam it together, or we can slip stitch it. So I'm just going to make sure that I have my right side. Okay, so we want the right sides facing, so the seam is going to go to the inside. Just make sure. I'm gonna just finish this stitch off. Chain 1. Okay, so the right sides are facing. So you could just take your yarn needle now and just sew this so that it's together, but I'm just going to really quickly just single crochet it together. I'm gonna go through the V stitch. And I'm going to keep my stitches really loose. And I am just going through the chain 1 spaces to single crochet it. But if you pull your stitches too tight, it will pull it in because I'm not going through every stitch. So I'm just keeping it really loose, going through all of the chain 1s. And this is just a really quick way to do it. So even though I'm not going through every stitch, it's not distorting the hood at all. and then you can just fasten it off. Will look like this. Now, by seaming it with a yarn needle, this will be nice and flat. So it does have a little bit of a ridge when you single crochet it like that, but it still looks okay. Now what you're going to do to finish this off is you're going to work it just like I've already shown you how to do the edging. It's just now we're also going around the hood. So work it just the same as I showed you previously, except you're just going to keep going all the way around. So I finished going around my hood in the stitch the same as I showed you with just the V-neck, but I joined it at the side rather than at the back like I did with the V-neck because we have the hood. So I just joined it in the side. So what I added is just a couple strings on the side of the hood. So just at that foundation row and this foundation row, and I made a simple I-cord. Looks really neat and it's really easy to do. So I'm just going to quickly show you how. So once you've worked around, all you're doing is slip stitching to join, fastening that off, and then you can join on to do your I-cord strings wherever you want. So you want to pull off a really long tail, just so that you don't run out. And then what you're going to do is take your smaller hook and you're going to join here, but I'm just going to show you at any spot. You can just place your hook through. Pull through. And then with your working yarn, so I would say at least just, you know, an 80-inch tail is going to give you lots. You're going to pull through to get started. Then you're going to take your tail, wrap it over your hook, take your working yarn, yarn over, pull through. So take your tail, wrap it over your hook, take your working yarn, yarn over, pull through. And you just continue like this. I suggest doing about 100 stitches, and then this will give you like a nice long tail. If you want to do it shorter, you can, longer, you can. It's really just for looks, not necessarily for function. So it's up to you if you want to add this or not. This is just a simple way to make your I-cord. It makes it a little thicker than just doing a chain, and it looks really neat. And once you get it long enough, what you're going to do is just fasten off, pull through, and then I just take my tails and knot it a few times and trim just to get rid of the tails, but you can also, you could weave them back up and trim them, but I just fasten off, give it a knot with the two tails, and just trim it. And it's just going to look like this on the end when you do that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoy these little extra modifications I've added to the top. And if you're looking for the pattern or any links, make sure to check the description box below the video. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.